All right, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with the cyanotoxin monitoring webinar. Thank you all for joining us. Mike will be taking over in a second, but what I wanted to do first was just let everybody know that we're going to be using emoticons to raise hands and ask questions during the webinar. Periodically, Mike and Kari will open it up for questions, at which point you'll hear it say that everybody is in full participation mode or something similar to that. At that point, please raise your hands. There's an option to use emoticons, and just click on the raise hand option. And we'll try to answer the questions in order as they come in. So please familiarize yourself with that. And I'm just going to hand it over to Mike if he has anything else to say preliminary, and then just get started. Thank you.
So can I see that square, or what do we do that?
There you go.
Thanks, Dan. I'm Mike Mulvey. I work at the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Laboratory in the Water Monitoring Section. I've had contact with many of you folks. And Kari Salis from Oregon Health Authority is here also. What do we do here, Dan? Let's go to the next slide. Just a presentation overview real quick. We've done the introductions part. We'll have a little bit of webinar etiquette, background on harmful algal blooms, a little bit of the biology, ecology. And then Kari will take over. This is the meaty part of the presentation, an overview of the temporary cyanotoxin rules. Then I will talk about the sample collection, how to collect the sample, submit the sample to the lab, materials that we are sending out to you now or are about to send out, and then how facilities will receive. The questions are a little different than I thought. I thought there was going to be a little box on the side that you could type your questions into, but we're recording this presentation, so it's real hard. I guess we don't have that ability, so we'll try this hand-raising deal, or we'll stop periodically and just take questions. And you know, I hope we have plenty of time for questions. If we don't get to your question, send Kari a question about the rule, or me about sample collection, or Ryan is telling us we can type it here. Note to all presenters. How'd you get to that, Ryan?
You can't talk to you.
You can't talk to us. I have you muted. We'll watch it. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. Three bars at the top of the participants. How do I get to the next slide? Oh, there we go. So let us know right away if you can't hear. I think nobody's said anything, so I guess if you can't hear, you would know I was telling you to contact me. Mute your phone. We have you muted, but if you wanted to, if we have you unmuted, and do you know how they get to this? How we get to it? Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Ryan. My AV guy here says he knows what we're doing here. So, if you need to leave and come back, don't put us on hold. It'd be better when you put your phone on hold, it plays an obnoxious music or something like that, and we all hear it. And we'll figure out how to deal with the questions. Okay, some background about cyanobacteria. This is some of the biology. What are they? Why are they here? What do they do? They go by a couple different names: cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, harmful algae, or cyanophytes. All terms are used for the same thing. They are prokaryotes, are a type of bacteria. They don't have a nucleus or other cell structures like plants and animals. It's no internal membrane-bound structures. They are a very old form of life. Some of the oldest things in the fossil record that we can identify as being living things look a lot like the blue-green algae we have today. They're very successful. Every damp place, wet place on the planet just about grows blue-green algae of some sort. In the history of the planet, they were the first organisms to evolve the type of photosynthesis that releases oxygen, free molecular oxygen, O2, and they're responsible for the oxygen that we have in the atmosphere today. So although they're a pain in our neck, they're also we should be grateful for them. And some of the species, some other bacteria species are capable of nitrogen fixation. The atmosphere has got like 78% nitrogen gas, N2, and all living things need nitrogen to make proteins. However, that N2 is unavailable to plants, animals, fungi. There's just a select number of species of blue-green algae and other bacteria that can take this N2 and convert it into proteins. That process is called nitrogen fixation. That turns out to be kind of an important physiological trick that helps explain why, under certain conditions, they dominate. So harmful algal blooms. They're called blooms because they seem to come on very suddenly. All of a sudden, it grows very rapidly. These little organisms can just about double in number every 20, 30 minutes under ideal conditions. So oftentimes it's quite fast. The conditions that favor blooms are sunny weather, warm waters. It gets to be over, say, 77 degrees Fahrenheit. They often dominate. They like high nutrients, particularly phosphorus and nitrogen. The phosphorus, the ratio of available nutrients is high phosphorus. They tend to like that since they can fix the nitrogen they need, unlike other algae. The ones that are bloom-causing problem algae often slow-moving water or lakes, ponds. They can regulate their buoyancy, meaning they can float sometimes of the day and sink at others. I've been to some lakes where you come out in the middle of the day and it just looks like green paint, and you come back that afternoon and where did they go? Well, they just kind of sunk to a lower level. The question that people often ask is, are blooms occurring more frequently today than in the past? We certainly hear a lot more about them, but what is the trend? Are we just doing a better job of looking for them? We're more aware today than we were in the past, or are they happening more frequently? And the short answer is we really don't have good data to answer that question. It sure seems like they're happening more often, but I don't know if it's because we're looking better, looking more, or they're occurring more. I suspect it's some of both, but we'll find out. The technology for monitoring these things on a global scale using satellites has really had some exciting developments in the past recent years. So, I suspect we'll be able to start answering that question soon, but we're just not there. Another thing to look at here, these things here, nitrogen and phosphorus, warm water, slow-moving water, those are all parts of the natural environment. People often ask, well, why is it here? Who can we blame for this algae bloom? A lot of times it's just part of the natural environment. It just is. Nobody really to blame. There's things that human beings do to increase nutrients, particularly phosphorus, from sewage treatment plant effluents rich in phosphorus, animal waste, manure, runoff from fertilized lawns and farms, certainly. But overall, they're just part of the environment. It's nobody really to blame. As the planet gets warmer, you might see the extent of these things get worse. The water's warmer. Maybe there's more drought conditions that result in more erosion that brings in more sediment to water. There's a bunch of things that human beings interact with, but really, for the most part, they just are. So, cyanobacteria in drinking water, that's what brings us here today. They can cause taste and odor problems. They can, under certain conditions, produce toxins that impair nervous system and liver in mammals. So why are they producing these toxins? They're certainly not doing it to make our lives difficult. What role do these chemicals have in the life of the cyanobacteria? I asked that question of a couple of people who do a lot of research in these things, and they really don't know. At least I don't think they know. Sometimes it seems to be defense against parasitic fungi. Sometimes they say it's to compete against other algae as far as absorbing nitrogen and low nitrogen waters, that sort of thing. So what is BQ's role regarding cyanobacteria? Drinking water, we really don't have a role in drinking water other than to support Oregon Health Authority's rule. we do some kind of preventative or proactive planning about source water risks. That would probably be one of them. We certainly have a role in supporting the rule as far as sample analysis. For contact recreation, which is a whole different thing I'm not going to get into, but we are involved in that at the request of Oregon Health Authority if somebody calls in a harmful algal bloom suspected. And that's different. And also, we have a Clean Water Act list of water quality limited bodies. Nuisance algae is going to be a reason to get on that list. We'll talk about that either. What is that? Okay, we're going to look at these chat boxes. What are they saying, man? Oh.
I think maybe we should just re-ask.
Hey, Ryan here has mentioned that he's having trouble hearing. I'm sorry I didn't read these things about hearing them. Make sure your phone is muted. We have muted everyone on this end, so we can't hear you, but even if you're not speaking, if you're rattling phone, please, what else can we do? Yeah, the webinar is being recorded. I'm going to lower it into the microphone. Yeah. Somebody's not muted. What should we do? Yeah, we can't make somebody use their phone. Can you tell who's not muted on this list? What does the phone with a little line to it mean? Well, they're all muted. What about Tricia Hayerman? Yes, Tricia, are you muted? All right. Well, it's being recorded, and hopefully the audio in the recorded part will be wonderful. What should we do, Dan? Okay, I could do it. I'm going to turn this over to.
Okay, so this is Kari, Salis. I am the technical manager in the drinking water services for the Oregon Health Authority, and I've been with the state for about a little over 20 years, and I was heavily involved in the cyanotoxin issue, so I'll be just doing a summary of the rules, and if anyone has any questions, I guess send an announcement, or I'll ask about we're just kind of talking about the history of how we got to where we are today. The Oregon Health Authority has had a harmful algal bloom program since 2008, and mostly their kind of role is to coordinate testing of recreational water bodies. So, and if those levels are high, they issue a recreational advisory, which would be for like boating and fishing and even dogs drinking the water, et cetera. And then in partnership with the drinking water program, we look at downstream users, you know, water systems with intakes along those rivers to see that, make sure that they're monitoring. So in the second bullet, I'm talking about best management practices. We've had those in place for, let's just say, less than 10 years, but has been a voluntary program. So basically, once the harmful algal bloom program issued a recreational advisory, it was voluntary that downstream water suppliers did any sampling for cyanotoxins. So we have about 10 years worth of data, and we have found some detections, certainly in recreational water and in water through intakes, but never before have we found levels that exceed any health advisory levels in treated water until this year. So that was a huge, unprecedented event, and it kind of made us realize that with systems monitoring voluntarily, we don't really know what's out there. And so we were directed to create some regulations around that to make sure that public health is protected and people understand what's in their water. So these are health advisory levels established by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. They have only developed health advisory levels for total microsystems and cylindrospermopsin. There's a couple other cyanotoxins that are also of concern, but of potential concern, I should say. But you know, we internally don't have the capacity to fully develop our own health advisory. So currently we are going off of EPA's advisory for these two cyanotoxins. And it's a little bit confusing because these health advisory levels are established at a 10-day frequency or value. So that would mean that the person would have to drink the water at this level, so with an average concentration of the levels you see here on the screen for 10 days before you would actually see an adverse health effect. So it's a very confusing message to the public, just keep that in mind, but that's what we have to work with. So, and you'll see that it's also broken out by vulnerable populations and then for adults and older kids. So the vulnerable populations, these two cyanotoxins are harmful particularly to the kidney and liver. So, and also children under age 6 because they're just smaller and they have a, you know, just the ratios are different for the body mass to contaminant. So the vulnerable population would be generally considered kids under age 6 and anyone with a liver or kidney issue. But then also elderly people are particularly can be vulnerable, as well as pregnant or nursing women. Okay. Oh, so just another note that these, when we say a health advisory, so above these levels, it's a do not drink notice. So this also has been unprecedented in Oregon. Like obviously it's a really significant deal for a city to issue a do not drink notice. Okay, so first, when developing the regulation, we had to determine what sources we believed could be considered susceptible. So we looked into, we worked with our DEQ partners to help develop some susceptibility criteria. And the criteria is the only thing that's actually in the regulation. Everything okay?
I think I just moved those out of the way.
Okay, thank you. So, of course, if there has been a harmful algal bloom in the past, or if any cyanotoxin was detected in the water system, of course that would be an indication that the source is susceptible. Also, if a source or an intake is downstream of a water body that has had harmful algal blooms in the past, that would be a potential susceptibility criteria as well. Also, we worked with DEQ to kind of combine with their 303D list if they have limiting factors on their water body for algae and aquatic weeds, chlorophyll, nitrates, phosphorus, pH, and dissolved oxygen. So we're kind of trying to cast a relatively broad net to kind of figure out the occurrence of these contaminants in Oregon because it just hasn't been done before. And then we will use, of course, information that we get from these temporary rules which expire at the end of the year. And then during that time, we'll be developing permanent rules. So we'll use data that we collect from this time period to inform our permanent rules. I just also want to mention that so there's also like a list of systems that are required to monitor, and the list isn't in the rule. So if you find yourself on the list and aren't sure why, I mean, it is on our website as to why, but if you have information or data that you feel like would make a different decision, we are definitely open to receiving that. We've added and removed several systems since the list came out. So please talk to OHA if you feel like we've missed a source or perhaps one source shouldn't be on the list. Okay, I just want to go over the sampling locations, the various like possibilities of sampling locations. Those of you that are water supply operators hopefully are somewhat familiar with these terms because we use them for other contaminants as well. So, you know, a lot of times we talk about the source, but I just want to be really clear that when we're talking about sampling, we're not talking about you going out in rubber boots and sampling the actual like environmental water body. We're talking about you sampling from a tap from your intake. So where it says SRC there, that would be like the source as in a tap off of your intake. Hopefully that's clear to people. So it's prior to any treatment. It's often in your treatment plant building, but depending on the situation. So on the slide here you'll see, so most samples will be taken from that, what we call the source, or the SRC. In my drawing here I have 4 sources, which probably not too many systems have, but and you can see like the dark green is supposed to be like a potentially susceptible source to cyanotoxin. So if you have more than one source that has been determined to be susceptible, you can sample at what we call the common header, which is that CH location. So basically it's a combined sample, and it is representative in this example I've given here of sources that are not susceptible as well, but mostly we're looking at loading onto the treatment plant, so it would be okay to sample at the common header there. So it's after all the sources combine. But again, it's if you just have one, it's preferable to sample at the source, meaning the intake. Okay, and then and I'll go over the monitoring requirements and when it triggers into additional monitoring, but if you're triggered into monitoring your finished water or treated water, or what we also call the entry point to the distribution system, then you can see there that's after all treatment, and that includes all chlorination and disinfection contact time. It's just before it's going to the distribution system. So that would be your entry point sample if you're required to take one. And then further, if you are required to take one in the distribution system, we hope that's an uncommon scenario, and if that is the case, we could discuss that with you, because it would be a different number based on your system size. It would be locations that we would consider representative. So we would work that out with the operators if necessary at that time. Okay, so this is just a super brief summary of the monitoring requirements. All systems with susceptible sources have to sample their raw water. Again, that's from the intake every 2 weeks. So that's kind of going to happen basically from now, well, I think technically starting next week.
Monday.
Starting Monday, and then perhaps the week after. Mike will go over the scheduling on that. But let's just say now-ish through the end of October. So that will just happen regardless. You may have to do increased monitoring, which is if either cyanotoxin level, so either total microsystems or cylindrospermopsin are over greater to or equal than 0.3 micrograms per liter, then you have to sample at the raw and entry point weekly. So that's kind of a trigger for that. Some people have asked if you have to combine the 2 results, if it's a total equals 0.3, and just if each individual cyanotoxin, if one of the results is greater than 0.3, it triggers you into increased sampling. So then you'd be sampling at the raw and entry point weekly. If it's detected at the entry point, so any detection, we want sampling to increase to daily. And again, we hope that this isn't going to happen very often, but we'll see. So, and then of course, if any sample is over the health advisory level as established by EPA, we need you to do a confirmation sample as soon as possible. Then certainly, but within 24 hours. And then if it's confirmed above the health advisory level, you have to issue an advisory. And again, that would be a do not drink notice. And depending on the levels, it would depend on whether it's just for vulnerable populations or if it's for all of the populations. But then you'll begin sampling. You'll keep sampling at the entry point daily, and you'll also sample in the distribution system daily. And again, we would discuss locations for that at the time. Yeah, is it? So the question came up is, will the slides be sent after the webinar to all attendees. And yes, we can certainly do that. And again, this webinar is being recorded, so you can view the slides and hear the audio. It will be posted both on OHA Drinking Water Program's website as well as DEQ's website. Oops. Oh, how do I go back? Oh, that. Sorry about that. I was just showing, you don't even attempt to read this. I just want you to know that this exists. The monitoring, I just gave a super brief summary of the monitoring, but some people are more visual, and so, it just can help to kind of figure out what kind of monitoring would be required when. So I attempted to make this flow chart, and it's available on our website currently. So don't worry about reading it.
You'll chart that square at the top middle, right?
Excuse me?
Raw water biweekly is the first square up top.
Yes. Yes, so you can have this to print out if needed. Okay, these are some photos of the various lab methods. The photo on the left is showing the ELISA method, the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. This is in the DEQ lab where they're using this method. Also on the right is shown the LC-MS method, which is a liquid chromatography with double mass spectrometry. That is also available, and I'll discuss methods here. Okay, so as everyone probably knows, there are two methods to sample for cyanotoxins, and both methods are good methods. It's not necessarily true that one is better than the other. I would say they serve different purposes, and they're just different. So we spoke with EPA as well as State of Ohio, who's been through a lot of these issues, and we determined that for the purposes of basically responding to, figuring out what levels are there and comparing it to the health advisory levels as established by EPA, we are requiring the ELISA methods currently for both microsystems and cylindrospermopsin. So EPA has a standardized method called 546, which is an ELISA-based method. We will allow other ELISA methods. It's basically like a kit that you can get. And I just want to point out that a key factor in our decision to do this was that for total microsystems, the EPA health advisory is specifically for total microsystems. And that is what the ELISA kit measures. The LC-MS method only measures 6 or so congeners, which are like a variant of the microsystems. And so it's more for like quantification of those specific congeners, which isn't really the purpose that we're looking to serve at this point. So, and it has proven to be reliable with EPA testing and in Ohio. And so we felt like it was the appropriate choice, particularly for these temporary rules. And so we also chose that method for cylindrospermopsin. We'll be, again, working on the permanent rules, and we'll have a more public process, and we'll have a lot more time to develop these rules. We only had about 3 weeks. So, I can't say what we'll do for the permanent rule, but this is what we're doing here. Should I pause for questions?
Yeah, what do you think? Should we unmute and see if people have questions about this? Maybe take 2, 3, 5, something like that? Since we don't have although Ryan has found this comment box here, which is great.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Somebody has not muted their phone.
Okay, please mute your phone unless you're Lacey Gores-Priest. You can take your question, Lacey.
Thank you. So my question is related to the distribution samples. Should they be required to do a detect at the entry point to the distribution system? How will the number of samples required and the location of those samples be determined for the distribution system?
Well, I would say it's not a super well-defined process, but the parallel that we would probably use is when we have a system do a system-wide boil water advisory. We generally, like systems are so different, it's really hard to come up with like a number, but like some systems just have several like arms to their system, and so like smaller systems usually, and so we would say, okay, well, one per arm if it's just like one street. If it's a large system, you know, it's really going to be hard to say. Some systems have different, you know, pressure zones, or I think it would be a relatively small number, but we would just work with you at the time. I know, Lacey, you guys were taking 4 samples in the distribution system. We certainly felt that was, you know, just about just right. So I guess that's about all I can say. If for Salem did 4 in the distribution, maybe that gives people an idea of how many. It would be somewhere between, say, 0 and 10. Or not 0, I'm sorry, 1 and 10. I'm sorry, that's the best I can answer that. Is that, do you have any follow-up?
No, I don't. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is Toby Smith on the line? You had your hand raised as well.
Yes, my question was basically related in the sense that there's I guess an assumption that if it's there's a detect at the health advisory level in the raw system, then there would also likely be a detect in the treated water, and thus you would employ the restrictions or advisories to your customers, correct?
Maybe I didn't totally follow that, but if there's a high level in the raw water, we just feel like with a higher loading onto your filter, we just want to, you know, I mean, hopefully just verify that your treatment system is working adequately. And of course, we hope it is removing those cyanotoxins. But we do feel like monitoring to verify that is important. If it is over the health advisory level only in the treated water, like we wouldn't issue an advisory, you know, prior to treatment. It's only after treatment that an advisory would be issued.
Oh, okay. I was just confused. The slide, one of the previous slides, was talking about raw water and then steps to take.
That's used more as, I would refer to that more as like a trigger. So again, with and we talked to Ohio quite a bit. Ohio found that they actually have a higher trigger, but again, we're kind of trying to gather data here. So at higher levels, sorry, if others can mute their line, that would be helpful. Other than Toby. So if there's a higher loading of the cyanotoxins onto the filter, you know, that just can max out or stress treatment. And so it could be that some of it is getting through the filtration system.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have for now.
Yeah, if you had your hand raised, if you wouldn't mind going in and just clearing that off that time, that way the next time we open it up for questions, we can make sure to get any new questions that might come in. Put everybody back on mute.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Okay, so just continuing on with the rule, these will be a little more brief, just about public notification. So, of course, as I mentioned, you would have to issue a health advisory if sample results are confirmed over the health advisory levels. So that means, again, basically 2 samples that are taken after treatment. That's when a health advisory would need to be issued. And that would apply to the public water system that is responsible for treatment, as well as any water systems that buy water from that system. So the advisory would be issued for everyone. And that would be in the form of a press release. We wrote into the rule just to kind of cover any unforeseen scenario. If we allow delaying issuing of the health advisory, which I can't really imagine, but we might, I don't know. So then we would, just because we do think the public should be informed of these levels, so we did require that a public notice would have to be done letting people know of the levels, but it would also include information as to why a health advisory wasn't being issued. So again, that may never happen. And then we would also, I think each community would have to decide whether it was appropriate for them to do a press release or a public notice as to initial results, because I think we all saw with the most recent health advisory that this has a high level of public interest, and the city could be open to criticism if they delay any reporting of information. So what the rules represent is what the city systems have to do, kind of the minimum they have to do. Any water system is welcome to be more conservative and do more public notification or act more conservatively than the rules would require. So also as far as notification, every water system has to do an annual consumer confidence report, or some call it a water quality report. Any detections that are found in treated water would have to be put in your consumer confidence report, not raw water, just to clarify that, treated or distribution system. And then there's also criteria for lifting an advisory if one were issued, and it would be that if 2 consecutive samples taken after treatment are less than the health advisory. Did I say that right? 2 consecutive samples less than the advisory, and in the distribution. So basically all samples after treatment for 2 days have to be less than the health advisory. So that is, again, I would say the minimum established in the rule. If a system were to choose to wait longer to lift the advisory, that would certainly be supported. I could see that a system wouldn't want to bounce back and forth, advisory today, not tomorrow, but the next day, yes. So again, the rules represent the minimum that systems have to comply with. Okay, then on reporting, there are certain requirements that the labs must report. It's similar to other requirements for water systems that are familiar with these. If any contaminant is above a certain level, the results have to be reported directly to OHA. In this case, it's within 24 hours of validated results. And then there's a total for the whole amount of time of analysis. Mike from DEQ is going to be discussing how, if you use DEQ as the lab, they will be coordinating with OHA to get the data to us. Water systems must also notify their purchasers, so any water system that buys water from them, if any result is greater than the health advisory level within 24 hours. So, and then the purchasers need to begin distribution sampling. So that notification to purchasers is in the rule. I would certainly hope that systems wouldn't push up against that 24-hour limit, because they would need to give the purchaser a chance to do the sampling. And then also we need reporting to OHA, again, from the public water system, but if you're using DEQ as the lab, it's likely that we will be able to work this out between DEQ and OHA. but we do need within 24 hours any results that would lift an advisory, because we want to make sure we have the results in our hand before we agree that the advisory can be lifted. And also if any results would change the frequency of monitoring. So if you're going to go from, say, every 2 weeks to weekly or weekly to daily, et cetera, we would need those results within 24 hours. And then other results, such as non-detects, those can be reported by the 10th of the following month, which is the same kind of schedule that you would be on for your coliform bacteria reporting. So that's a summary of that. And then I think I'm going to hand it back over to Mike. I'll do a brief pause for questions, I guess. Sorry. Dan's going to help us with that. So that concludes my summary of the rules, and Dan is going to go ahead and, or excuse me, Mike.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, raise your hand and we'll take those in order. Otherwise, please mute your phones.
Lacey?
Thank you. So the City of Salem has 3 wholesale customers, and so they've been asking about the purchaser requirements and their need to begin distribution sampling.
Yeah.
Should they be working directly with the DEQ lab to be set up to begin that sampling within that time frame, or is that something as the water provider we would need to do for the purchaser?
I would say each system would definitely need to coordinate with the lab of their choosing.
Okay.
So yeah, you as the, I guess, seller would not be responsible for coordinating that of your purchasers.
Okay.
But I mean, my suggestion would be, because they wouldn't have to do monitoring until it's already been detected at the entry point. So that's kind of I would say that's sort of, I guess, a red flag or something, that would be the time to start communicating with your purchasers and to make sure, well, you wouldn't have to, but again, the purchasers, which maybe some of which are on this call, but they would need to make sure that they have everything in lined up with DEQ just in case that occurs, that they do need to do the sampling. So you as the seller are only responsible for the notification.
Okay, thank you.
And from the DEQ's standpoint, we haven't reached out to all of the purchasers at this point because it expands the list quite a bit on us, and we wanted concentrating on just getting those that we knew needed to sample right away. If we get a detection in raw water, that's when we will be asking the facility of anybody that is a purchaser of that water from their facility, and then we would contact them and set up based upon that we did find something in raw water, just so that we're prepared that if it is found in finished, we already know at least who the contacts are, so we're not trying to do that within 24 hours. That'll just kind of help us out in setup and getting kits and various things ready on our end. So we'll be reaching out to the facilities that are actually sending us samples when you get a detection, who you're selling water to, who their contacts are, and kind of helping us with that information.
Great, thank you.
Looks like Ben Clayman also has a question.
Yeah, hi Kari. Just if we could submit these results together with all of our other paperwork with the monthly operating report, or do they need to go to a different contact? Or
Partially, I would say it depends on what lab you're using. If you're going to be using the DEQ lab, we are working out with them. OHA is working out with DEQ a process to, and I don't know the terms exactly, but I think it's to like automatically upload the data into our system. So again, if you use DEQ, they will be doing that. If you're going to use a different lab, then yeah, just looking at the bullet points here with reporting, you would be free to send in the results that were non-detect or at least low levels by the 10th of the following month with the rest of your reports.
Okay, thank you.
I wish I had nothing to fucking go away.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we had. So I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Mike Mulvey. He's going to go over some specifics on reporting from the DEQ perspective and on sample collection, et cetera.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
This part deals with if you do decide to use the DEQ laboratory, how we'll be reporting the results to the facilities and to OHA. We don't deal with reporting to the public. That's you guys, of course. We will email the facilities a report of all results, validated final reports, as pretty much of the day that they're available. So some of you are collecting on Mondays, some are assigned to collect on Tuesdays. If you collect and ship on Monday, we receive the samples Tuesday, maybe start preparation, sample prep on Tuesday, analyze by Wednesday, and maybe report even Wednesday afternoon or Thursday. If you collect the samples on Tuesday, they arrive by Wednesday, we get them analyzed by Thursday, and Thursday or Friday report. And these will be an end-of-the-day report that's emailed to you. DEQ laboratory will also notify Oregon Health Authority of results that are over a health advisory level within a day. And then all the results go to them within 10 days. And I'm not exactly sure what that 10-day product is.
So what will be happening is after each week, roughly, will be all the non-detects, basically any result will be electronically transmitted to drinking water and uploaded for CIDWIS. So you won't have to worry about that reporting requirement. That will be handled through the data exchange between DEQ and OHA. And that's for any results for samples that come to our laboratory. For anything above health advisory level, we will also transmit within the 24 hours electronically that data to OHA.
One thing, this is Kari again, I didn't mention that many of you may be familiar with our website called Data Online. So we post essentially in real time all of the results that we've received for each water system. So each system kind of has a page, and anyone, it's on the internet, so anyone can look at the results. So these cyanotoxin results will also be on our Data Online page. We're going to create a new button or a new link, whatever, that'll be for cyanotoxins. I don't think it's developed yet, but it should be ready hopefully in the next week or two.
So do you think we need to stop and pause again, or should we just keep going? We'll just keep going. We're going to switch now to how to collect and submit these samples to the DEQ laboratory. As you probably all know by now, the cost of the analysis, the sample equipment, the shipping of the samples, if you use DEQ, that's all covered for the required testing. If you decide to go to the additional LCMS, we'll have to figure something else out. There would be a charge for that, though. I don't know how that's being handled yet. But here's our new lab. There it is.
Let me address.
Okay.
So how we're handling all the costs to sampling, including any distribution, all the way up through distribution sampling, is covered if you're using our laboratory. If you want additional samples or tests like LCMS confirmations, any of that nature, that testing we can also provide through a intergovernmental agreement or a contract basically with our laboratory, and it's just a one-page contract. You let us know as long as we have capacity for it, we will take those samples and do that work, and then invoice you monthly for whatever samples were sent to our laboratory. And you can contact Mike if you're interested in that type of work, and he'll work with myself to get those contracts into place, and if we have the capacity for the work.
And this is Kari again with OHA. I just want to add that if those samples are done with LCMS, MS, we don't have an advisory against, with which to compare that. So we don't necessarily know how we will advise the city to respond to those results. So just keep that in mind. You would be entering sort of an unknown, even though it's a little bit different with Salem, but we've learned a lot in the last month, and you know, we would just have to talk if those results are obtained.
And the analytical turnaround time that I talked about, Monday samples reported on Thursday, that would probably not apply for
Correct.
the LCMS or extra samples. We're focused on getting the required ones turned around quickly. This other thing would be, I don't know, be different. This is out in Hillsborough.
Just one click.
Just one click now. Just a little overview of the program. It's approximately 100 susceptible facilities are involved across the state. If you add up the number of people served by these facilities, it's 2.4 million people, or about 58% of the state's population. It goes from the largest ones in the state, serving more than 600,000 people, to very small ones like campgrounds and trailer parks and so forth. About 43% of the facilities are small, fewer than 1,000 people. Here is the sampling schedule. There's 16 weeks altogether. This is for the raw biweekly, the first stage of this sampling, raw water. I've sent out notifications to folks what sampling group there is. There's an A week and a B week every other week. A week starts next week. And in order to stagger the sample volume coming into the lab, we have about half, or well, it's a quarter of the system sampling on a Monday and a Tuesday of each of these staggered weeks. So I've sent out group emails to people what group they're in. I'll send them out again. Some people have asked to be moved to a different week or whatever. We want to keep approximately the same number of facilities in each bin, just for the sake of not driving the chemists crazy. The 8th week has a Labor Day in it, so we're going to just sample on Tuesday that week. So the Monday people will sample on Tuesday. Perhaps by the 8th week, our chemists will just be flying through these samples and not be overwhelmed by getting a double batch. We'll see. But the consensus was that we just couldn't do it on Monday. And there's 16 weeks with every other week. Everybody will be submitting 8 samples. Hopefully that would be the case for the majority of people. So you're going to get a box. This is Chase, our sample custodian. This is one box right here. Inside that box are 4 little coolers. This is one turned on its side. One of them has got 10 sample bottles. These are 125 milliliter amber glass bottles. There's another one in there that has these gel packs. There's 16 of those. The other 2 are empty. Here's Sarah Rockwell from our IT department getting the forms and label packets ready. That will also be in the box. Here's a checklist. You should probably, when we post this or send you the slides, print this one out so you unpack the box when you get it. 50 of them went out yesterday, and I think another 50 will go out today, Monday. This is what you should have in it. 4 of those little coolers, 16 blocks of ice. Put those flatten them out, put them in the freezer. There's at least 10 of these amber glass 125 milliliter bottles with a sodium thiosulfate tablet inside. Just check for broken bottles. They're all bubble wrapped, so it should be okay. 10 will be more than enough if we don't go to the next level, because you'll only be submitting 8, I think, for most places, maybe not all. If you start to run out, be sure and let us know for some reason. There'll be 10 little bubble bags, 10 Ziploc bags, and there'll be 4 large Ziploc bags for you to put your paperwork in. There's 4 UPS return labels with self-adhesive envelopes, as well as a bag of paperwork. So you get this, unpack it, look at it, make sure it's complete. Let us know right away if you need more stuff. Something's missing, but those guys went into production mode, and I think they should all be good. Here's a sample bottle, bigger than life. These things are only about 4 or 5 inches tall. The top of this label is the 100 milliliter mark, approximately. You'd want to fill to that line. There's already a little sodium thiosulfate tablet in there. Be sure not to knock that out. not toxic or anything. If it does, whatever, it's just a little bit of preservative. And you check whether it's raw water or finished water. There's also a second label you put on the bottle. You get a sheet of these in your packet. There's 15 of them here. This is a detailed one. Please check that this number is correct. Please check that we got your name right. You would need to figure out the sampling point, and it's on the form, but for most people it'll be an SRC location. A couple can't find their SRC, their source water. There might be from a common header, and then this would be for later if we get to that stage. So you would need to know that. It's also on the form. You need to know where that is. Put in the date and time. Get these, collect the sample. Please check this to make sure this is correct. This is the laboratory's chain of custody form. This is our main form, and this will all be pre-filled out, and there'll be one location. This is your sample ID number for that specific location. This tin whisk number, I'm not sure where that comes from, but you don't have to worry about it. But this number you need to pay attention to. This needs to match what's on the bottle, and you need to look at that. So just to kind of advance to the next thing, if you could, I don't know, get this out of there. So what this says behind this thing is to please check this part over. Make sure it's correct. And you can, if you feel confident, you can make corrections right on here. Cross out if we got this number wrong, for instance, or facility, or phone number, or whatever. Single line through there so we can still see it. Write in the correct information. Put your initials. Usually when we do the data entry like this, we have one person do the entry, and a second person check it to look for mistakes. We just have not had an opportunity to do that second check-in stage for everybody. So we're going to rely on you folks to make sure we got it right. And it's impossible to do the data entry without making mistakes. It's catching the mistakes early that's important. So if you could look at that, would be outstanding. Also, the list we're often dealing with has some, sometimes it's outdated or has some issues. So if you could, besides data entry, there just could be mistakes in the list. So we'd like to catch those really early. Item number, the first line is item 1, the second one is item 2. This number has to match the code that's on the bottle. Remember, there's a space to put the location information down. It's a bad day in sample receiving when the bottles in the cooler don't match what's on this form. So please try and have those things match up. You don't have, for the ones, this will be pre-filled out for what we know or at least think you're submitting this. But if you're submitting something that's not anticipating, you would need to put this code in this second or third column. Circle whether it's a source water or finished, the date and time it was collected. This has an address. This is actually the water body name, Clackamas River or Detroit Reservoir or whatever. If you're into the distribution center, which hopefully will be a relatively few, if any, it might be an address for the location. And then whatever you want to put in here for comments. When you get ready to pack up your cooler and send it out, the person who packs it up would put their name here legibly, or signature legibly, the agency, which would probably be the same as this, and the date and time, and then you kind of. When we receive it, the sample custodian will put received by and fill out this part. This is for when the samples are received in the lab. You don't have to worry about that. You'll put the collectors here, and if it's not the same as this agency, sometimes there is a consultant that collects the sample, Jacobs, for example, or something like that. You should put that in there. This is our main form. Again, check this stuff out. The first, just be really for the first one, we need to really kind of get on it, correcting mistakes. This is your checklist for packing the small coolers. We wrap these things in samples in bubble wrap and put them in another bag, and that kind of insulates them from getting cold. And I don't know what your specific logistics as far as collecting the sample and getting it ready. If it's possible to stick the sample in the fridge for 20, 30 minutes to chill it, that'd be great. If not, don't worry about it. As you pack up, check the labels on the bottles. Are they complete? Check the chain of custody form. Do they match? put the sample bottle in little bubble wrap bag, put the bubble wrap bag inside another little Ziploc bag, squeeze it and seal. Put your completed forms inside the Ziploc bag, surround it with 4 frozen gel packs. That will fill up less than half of that little cooler for one sample, so fill up the rest of the space with just crumpled newspaper or waste scrap paper. Things get broken if they rattle around inside there. Tape the box shut. It just occurred to me the other day I haven't sent you any tape. You're going to have to supply your own packing tape. Sorry about that. So you attach a self-adhesive label to the top of the UPS label and somehow get the UPS. Most places that are, close to town or whatever can call for UPS for a pickup, or there's pickup locations, or we'll figure something out. I've been told that there are some places in the state that are poorly served by UPS, like Southwest Oregon maybe. I don't know. And if we need to switch to FedEx or something else, we'll figure something out for those folks. But for the most part, let's use UPS if we can. So here's in pictures what we're talking about. There's the bottle, there's the bubble wrap bag, the Ziploc bag, 4 frozen gel packs, your chain of custody form in a bag, the mailing label, and a shipping label in a bag, and some waste paper. There's the packer. There's your tape that I didn't supply. This is the chain of custody form. Just give it a check over, just like this. Okay, powers. Okay, good. Yeah, the powers. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And sign and date it, pack it up. So here we are in the details. There's the double bag bottle. There's the bottle in the cooler with the 4 packs around it. Crumpled paper, chain of custody form in a Ziploc bag. Put the lid on, tape it shut, slap the label on there, and you're good to go. Here are a whole bunch of things, contacts for more information. Here's Kari's information, a good web page for information. If you have questions about the rule, she's your person. If it's about the sampling part of it, I'm your person. I'm Mike. Eric Borisenko is the manager of the section. He would be a good person to call. I'm actually going to be out of town here for a couple of days, so unfortunately this bounces to poor Aaron. There's also a couple of good web pages. This is the Oregon Health Authority web page. We often also have a drinking water programs web in the water quality section. There's not much on there relative to this. This would be your main web page. And if you go to this web page, there's these links here that are really have a lot of great information. Yeah, there we go. We're going, wow, here we are. So what do you want me to do?
Yeah, just the temporary rules.
There's a temporary link to the
no, yeah, it's right there. Go down.
Oh,
yeah,
there it is. There's the temporary rule explained, notices, the Oregon Administrative Rule link.
Can you point out the flow chart there?
Yeah, why don't you drive there?
Okay, yeah, this is Kari again. So this is our website. If you go, you can also get there from our home page, and just there's like a button under News and Hot Topics for cyanotoxin rules. We have the list up here. The flow chart that I showed during the webinar is on our website now. These frequently asked questions, I think it's pretty extensive, so that's a useful resource. We also have, additional resources for cyanotoxins in general on a separate page, but there's quite a bit of information here. And just a quick note, I guess, that we previously had best management practices that were guidelines that we had recommended to systems. Those have all been removed from our website because the rules basically supersede those best management practices. So in case you're wondering where that old information was, it's now old and outdated, so it's not there anymore.
Okay, how do I get back?
At the bottom.
What? Where do I click on your power? And before we end, I wanted to be sure and thank you folks. We've done a lot of complicated large monitoring programs here at DEQ over the years. but I don't remember one with quite so many independent moving parts landing on us so fast and so messy as this one. And I've talked to many of you on the phone, and others, I think just about everybody I've exchanged email with. And I want to thank you for your help from this and for your patience. It seems like we're scrambling to figure this out. You're right, we are. So I thank you for your patience in the past, and I thank you for your help and patience in the future as we travel down the road, smooth out the rough spots to the end of October. So we'll go to questions. And Dan will unmute you, and you can raise your hand.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode. All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Okay. Then you click on the person. Right-click on. Yeah.
Okay, Bill. Bill, Messe?
Yeah, nice try, thanks.
Sorry, Bill. My sincere apologies. You've probably been suffering with that for a long time.
It's been a while. Hey, I got two quick questions. First one is, as I'm hammering out my budget for next year, how long will this service be available from DEQ with someone else picking up the bill?
It's unknown at this point in time. I think it kind of depends on the results that we see from this and what the final rule kind of looks like. A lot's, I think, riding on what we actually see in the data to what the future kind of looks like.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And this is Brian Bowling. I'm the laboratory administrator for DEQ and been integral in kind of getting the rules and the lab involved on this. So.
Okay. The second question, I'm in one of those really remote locations. I have zero FedEx service, and I have UPS once a day. But by the time my driver gets back to the Dalles, it's 8 o'clock at night, so my next day is no longer next day. So what's the hold time on these things?
Can you put it in the fridge, and would that be good?
Yeah, they have to be, sorry, this is, I'm coming out now to you. This is Ned Fairchild. I'm the laboratory organics manager. The hold time on these is 48 hours that they have to be refrigerated until they can, they have to be frozen after 48 hours to be within the analytical hold time. Otherwise, we have to reject the samples or resample or something. So as long as they can be kept in a refrigerator and gotten to us still refrigerated within that 2-day window, we can still freeze them and still have good valid data to report.
Okay, well, what I guess I'm saying, though, is I'm going to have to ship it in a cooler. So, I mean, what kind of dry ice packs? I mean, what's the temperature that you will reject at, I guess?
Over 10 degrees centigrade.
10?
Yeah, if you could store them in the fridge and then put them in the cooler with the little gel ice packs, I'm hoping we're okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, so it looks like Kim Lord has the next question. Unmute Kim.
Kim, well, it looks like she might have been dialed in and signed in separately. So I'm going to have to unmute everybody.
Okay. Kim, are you there?
Is it mute all?
Oh, I did.
Oh, you're mute all. Okay, sorry.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Hi, Kim Lord. Are you there?
Yes, we're here in Ontario.
What was your question?
Can you hear me?
Lab accept shipments on the weekend. I would say no. There's nobody here.
So at this point, if we get into the daily sampling, something of that nature, we'll tackle need when that arises. At this point in time, with the way we are set up for just the raw sampling, the need isn't there. But if we get into a place where we have detections, we have distribution sampling going on, we have public notices going out, that type of thing, we will be staffing to accept Saturday deliveries, which is the only day we can accept.
Then you're fucking breaking the rules.
Will DEQ call the public water system if the health advisory level is triggered?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
So the algal bloom advisories are handled with OHA and our harmful algal bloom program, and that's, like I said, been going on for a while. And we coordinate either drinking water or the HAB program will contact downstream users in that instance.
Looks like Kim had an item 1B. How will we know when there is a recreational?
I think I just answered.
Oh, you did. Okay. If daily sampling is required, how will the shipping from the east side of the state be accomplished? I'm hoping that UPS or FedEx will deal with it. We're going to specify next day delivery, right?
Yeah.
Day or whatever.
Anything being shipped to the laboratory will need to be shipped next day for our receipt, so that we can accept the samples and get them within holding time.
Paid for. On the week.
Brian kind of said if
right.
needed.
If there is a need to receive samples on Saturday from a Friday to shipment, if we got into a situation and we needed to receive samples on Sunday that somebody's driving over to us, then we will make arrangements for that. But at this point, we're not planning on routine monitoring occurring on the weekends, but
to allow an extension to that 24-hour time period, and one of the criteria that's specific in the rule is based on weekends and lab capacity. So keep that in mind. If that becomes an issue, like Brian's saying, where certainly be in contact, and if we need to extend that timeline, we have the ability to do that in the regulations.
Ryan asked, if we never have a raw water hit, will we be automatically removed from the testing?
So this is Kari again from OHA. I would definitely say not necessarily. So we're, again, still working with our DEQ partners to establish susceptibility criteria. It doesn't mean they're going to have something every year. If it's susceptible, we likely still will want to be sampling to
all participants are now in listen-only mode.
Determine if it's an issue. But also, just know that for the permanent rule, we will be perhaps modifying our susceptibility criteria. So we have not yet begun that process, but so it's a little bit hard to say. It won't, but it certainly will not be automatic based on non-detects this season.
Yeah.
So there's a question on the reporting routine samples, and will DEQ be reporting everything to OHA? Yes, we will, including non-detects. We're not just reporting the exceedances of the health advisory levels to OHA. We're reporting all of the data to OHA electronically, so that you don't have to worry about that part of the reporting requirement. The next roll up. Not the Jacob one. No, other on that side. There was one from Jacob. question on will DEQ call the public water systems advisory triggered?
Yeah. Oh, we sure will.
Kim read
Okay.
the question?
We answered that.
Yeah, we answered that.
Okay. So
Dave
Dave.
On the cost for the ELISA, I believe it's 125 for the sample, for additional samples. It kind of depends on how many samples are going to be expected to be brought in and our capacity. And that's where just reach out to us and let us know if there's additional testing that you're going to want to have, and we'll look at that situation.
Can I just add to that? In the comment it was special, sample, or non-regulatory. I just want to add that we would consider any sample that's been collected at either a raw water location or post-treatment or distribution as a regulatory sample. So it has more to do with like the representative nature of the sampling location than the intent of the sampler. So if you're sampling from a location that, say, people are drinking or anyway, we would consider it a regulatory sample, and all of those sample results do need to be submitted to consideration for compliance.
Jeff Huchin says, in the presentation you showed only one bottle shipped. Our kits have bottles for both raw and finished water.
Okay. So you may be thinking that this may be related to the UCMR for sampling, where you have, I believe, both a raw and a finished bottle, or is it just a finished?
It'll be raw. Yeah, just finished.
Just finished. Yeah, our kits only require the one bottle. For the rule right now, when you're in the first stage of sampling, our kits we're only expecting one bottle back for the raw sample. If we get the detections and you trigger finished water, that is when you'll use the extra bottles that are present and fill one finished and one raw and send it to us. And on the bottle, you will just check mark. If it's the raw sample, you'll put a check mark in the raw, and if it's finished, you'll put a check mark in the finished. But we don't need a finished water bottle if you're just in the every other raw water sampling. We don't need a finished water.
So are there people, say, downstream of Detroit Reservoir that are already at a different stage than this first one? No? At this
stage?
Well, maybe are sampling every week finished water and raw water, or everybody is starting out at biweekly raw water?
Yeah, so if the advisory at Detroit Lake has been lifted, I don't think anyone is sampling weekly. But our old best management practices said that whenever there's an advisory in place, the downstream users would be sampling weekly.
Yeah.
And so I think there was, and we had OHA had a contract with a lab to do that sampling. And so there might be like a little bit of overlap, you know, where we were using the old lab. But as of January, is it the 15th, that's the Sunday? Yeah, as of that date, the regulations take over, and they should be sampling according to those.
I had one other thing that just occurred to me. Some of you folks are consultants, or that some of you are consultants that operate multiple small facilities, and there just wasn't feasible for us to lump those together. So you guys are going to get one of those big boxes that has everything, even though that might be more capacity than you need to send your stuff in. Okay. And also some of you said you were going to drive your samples in rather than ship them, Hillsboro and so forth. It just, logistically, it just was too hard to pull you folks out. So you're getting the shipping labels anyway. You don't have to use them if you still want to drive them in. It's your option either way.
So Kim Lord had a question about if she has a surface water system, or excuse me, surface water source and a groundwater under the direct influence of surface water source. And do we have to sample both individually or a composite? So that was, there was a slide where I had like sort of a diagram of the different sources that could be entering, say, a treatment plant. So so if you have more than two that are deemed susceptible to cyanotoxins, you can sample it at what we call the common header, which is essentially, you could call it a composite. It's where all the different pipings combine to the treatment plant. So that would be the common header situation.
So I think we've heard from Kim. Have we heard from Andrew Albee yet? He has his hand up. No. Yeah. So I guess we unmute Andrew here. Can we?
Because he probably dialed in first, and then I'm going to have to unmute everybody.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Okay.
Okay. The question was just regarding Labor Day. Noticed that we're scheduled to sample Labor Day, and I was just wondering if you still want the sample drawn on Labor Day or wait till Tuesday.
Yeah, you might have missed that slide. Wait for Tuesday.
Okay, all right.
Monday, Labor Day.
Okay, I must have missed it. All right, thank you. That's it.
Tuesday, yeah. So it'll be a little challenge for the lab, but I think by that time we'll maybe have things figured out.
Okay.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions? Is there any further questions for anybody? Raise your hand or type in the question.
Okay, going once, twice. All right, well, thank you very much. If you have further questions or something that comes up, questions about the rule, talk to our friend from OHA. If you have questions about the sampling itself, that would be DEQ. And,
trying to get to our contacts. Sorry.
Yeah, get to the contacts page. And I'll see about getting this posted.
Is there another way to do this? Okay.
Close some of these little boxes.
They can't.
Okay, can't see them. So there's our resources and contacts page. I'm going to be out of town here for the next couple of days, so Aaron would be the person to talk to for the sampling questions. And what was the new question?
Yeah, hold on.
There's a new question from Jacob Brady. Do we want the samples from the raw water source or the raw water at the plant? And definitely not the source. It should be raw water, so representing water prior to any treatment, but from the intake, whatever your intake structure is like, from the pipe leading to the plant, from a tap that you have there prior to any treatment. Is there another way to say that? Oh, so there's another question about how the do not drink notices can affect food processors. So we also work in partnership with the Oregon Department of Agriculture, who is the regulator for food processors. And so they would be more the resource to answer that question. And I know that they were in close contact with all of their facilities throughout the Salem issue, because that did not affect all the population. I don't think they made them cease production of whatever it was they were making. So I think I'm not going to answer it any more further than that. The ag is in close contact with their processors, and will continue to be if there should be an advisory. Okay, well, at this point, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So again, okay, well, now we just got another one. I think after this one, we're going to just cut it off. So let's see. So do you want to?
Yeah. So the analysis are being performed here at the lab in Hillsboro, the state DEQ lab. So the question was, are you performing the samples here in Oregon, or are the samples being shipped to another lab? At this time, all of the samples are being analyzed here at the state laboratory in Hillsboro. If we find our capacity is getting maxed, we will subcontract out through our contract to a contract laboratory. We will retain those samples that are of highest priority, which are those that have are further down in the rule, either in distribution sampling, finished water sampling. Those will be maintained for quick turnaround time. here at our laboratory, and then the raw routine samples would be subcontracted out by us and handled by us. If there's no other questions, we are going to end this. This will be, again, available on OHA's website, both the audio and the slide deck from this presentation. And I thank everybody for their time today and their time during the sampling that will be going on through October. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.